My name is Sophia Chen. 3 months ago, my boss stood behind my desk and announced to the entire department that my year of work was worthless trash. Then she hit delete. Right in front of 24 people. What she didn't know? She'd just erased the invisible glue holding our entire company together. 30 seconds later, my phone rang. Six-figure job offer, and I realized she'd just handed me the perfect weapon for the sweetest revenge I could ever imagine. But before I tell you how watching her spiral became the best moment of my career, hit that subscribe button. Because what I'm about to share will show you how one act of cruelty can backfire in ways that seem impossible until they happen right in front of your eyes. Trust me. You need to hear every detail of how this unfolded. Let me take you back to where this really started. Because revenge stories always begin long before the actual revenge happens. 16 months ago, I joined Apex Consulting as a client success coordinator. The job description sounded boring. Track communications, schedule follow-ups, monitor satisfaction metrics. What they didn't mention? Our company was bleeding clients faster than anyone wanted to admit. The person before me lasted exactly 3 months before quitting with no notice. My supervisor, Victoria Ashford, made it clear from day one that she thought my role was a waste of money. She was one of those people who believed business was purely transactional. Send invoices, deliver services, collect checks, repeat. The idea that clients might want actual human connection? Foreign concept to her systematic approach to everything. But I saw something different in those first few weeks. When I went through our client files, I found page after page of dry communication logs. Robot conversations. No personality. No warmth. No sign that anyone at our company had ever bothered to learn anything personal about the people sending us thousands of dollars every month. So I started doing something that felt radical in that environment. I began treating our clients like actual human beings. When Marcus Reed, who ran a mid-sized tech company, mentioned during a routine call that his rescue dog just got diagnosed with arthritis, I wrote it down. 2 weeks later, I followed up. Asked how the treatment was going. He was shocked someone remembered. Spent 20 minutes telling me about his weekend searching for a specialist vet. When Diana Cole celebrated her design firm's 10th anniversary, I sent a personal message, acknowledged the milestone, asked about her growth plans. She ended up booking an extra strategy session. Brought in 15 grand of unexpected revenue. These weren't huge gestures. No expensive gifts. I just listened when people shared pieces of their lives, remembered what mattered to them, followed up in ways that showed I actually cared about their success beyond what they paid us. Victoria never got what I was doing. She'd walk past my desk and see me typing what looked like casual notes. I could feel her disapproval radiating across the office. During monthly reviews, she'd flip through my reports with visible frustration. "Why are you spending 40 minutes on calls that should take 10?" she'd ask, tapping her pen against her tablet. "Your efficiency metrics show you're processing fewer interactions per hour than standard." I tried explaining. Longer conversations built stronger relationships. Clients were specifically requesting to work with me. Our retention rate had jumped 42% since I started personalizing things. But Victoria only cared about numbers that fit her spreadsheet formulas. What she didn't realize? I was building something far more valuable than efficient call logs. I was becoming the bridge between our company and the people who kept us in business. Carson Mills, who owned a chain of boutique gyms, started calling me directly when he needed anything. Bypassed our main number completely. He told me he appreciated talking to someone who remembered he was training for an Ironman and that his son just started college. Rachel Winters, whose catering business was our third biggest account, began recommending us to other companies, specifically because she enjoyed our conversations about her weekend farmers market trips and her grandmother's recipe book. Month after month, I watched our satisfaction scores climb, while Victoria stayed focused on efficiency metrics that completely missed the point. She was measuring how quickly we could process interactions. I was building the loyalty that would determine whether those interactions continued at all. Asterisk. Asterisk. Rising tension. Asterisk. The breaking point came during our annual strategy meeting. Our CEO Nathan Price was reviewing department performance. Mentioned that client retention had hit an all-time high. He specifically praised our relationship management approach. Suggested expanding the personal touch strategy across other departments. I watched Victoria's face shift as credit for improved retention landed on what she considered my inefficient methods. After the meeting, she cornered me by the break room. "I don't know what kind of performance you're running," she said, voice tight with controlled anger. "But this company succeeds on professional excellence, not social hour chats with clients." She assigned me a comprehensive audit of all client interactions over the past year. Detailed documentation of every communication, every follow-up, every relationship-building effort I'd made. Clearly, punishment. Hundreds of hours of bureaucratic busywork meant to pull me away from the actual relationship building driving our success. But I approached the audit with the same attention to detail I brought to client work. Created detailed records showing not just what communications happened but how those communications translated into business outcomes. Documented the referrals Rachel had generated. The expanded services Marcus purchased after we discussed his growth plans. The early contract renewal Carson signed because he trusted our partnership. The finished audit was 47 pages of proof that personal attention to clients was directly responsible for over $220,000 in additional revenue. Every casual conversation about weekend plans or family milestones had strengthened business ties that competitors couldn't replicate with generic professional approaches. I was proud of that audit. It represented not just a year of work, but a year of genuine connections that had transformed how our company related to people who trusted us with their business, which made what happened next even more devastating. Asterisk, asterisk, the betrayal. Asterisk, asterisk. Victoria called an all-hands department meeting on a Tuesday morning in late fall, announced we needed to review client relationship protocols, that my audit would serve as a case study for discussion. I assumed she was finally ready to acknowledge that personal attention was driving our improved performance. Instead, she directed me to display my audit files on the main conference screen, while the entire department watched. Then she started tearing apart every personal note, every conversation detail, every relationship-building effort, presenting them as evidence of unprofessional boundary violations. "This is exactly the kind of inefficiency that undermines our service standards," she declared, scrolling through months of careful documentation. "Personal chit-chat about pets and hobbies has no place in business. These files represent a complete failure to maintain appropriate professional distance." I felt heat spreading across my neck as 24 coworkers watched her shred work that had generated significant revenue. She was presenting my greatest professional achievement as a cautionary tale about what not to do. But then she did something that crossed a line I never expected. She pulled up the file containing my complete audit database. Every client note, every relationship detail, every conversation record proving how personal attention drove our success. Her finger moved toward the delete option while she kept talking about professional standards. "This entire approach is garbage," she announced, hand hovering over deletion. "Starting today, we return to efficient, professional communication protocols." And then she clicked delete. I watched a year of relationship building disappear from the screen. 47 pages of documented connections that had generated hundreds of thousands in revenue, gone in one vindictive moment. The silence in that conference room was absolute. Victoria turned away from the screen with a satisfied expression, clearly expecting me to accept this humiliation and start rebuilding according to her preferred methods. But she'd made one crucial miscalculation. Asterisk, asterisk. The twist, asterisk, asterisk. While she was destroying my documentation, she hadn't destroyed the actual relationships I'd built. The clients who trusted me, who called me directly, who'd shared personal details about their lives and businesses. Those connections existed in their hearts and minds, not in computer files. And apparently, some of those connections had been paying attention to our company dynamics more carefully than anyone realized. My phone started buzzing before Victoria finished explaining her new efficiency protocols. Caller ID, Summit Partners. A consulting firm formed when 3 former colleagues left to start their own company. I stepped out to take the call, hands still shaking from watching my work get deleted in front of everyone. Sophia, said the voice on the other end. We've been watching what's happening at Apex. We want to talk. The conversation that followed changed everything. Summit Partners had been tracking our client retention improvements. They knew exactly who was responsible for the relationships keeping major accounts happy. They'd been planning to approach me for months, but watching Victoria destroy my audit files convinced them timing was perfect. We're prepared to offer you $550,000 annually to join our team, they said. Plus equity and complete autonomy over client relationship strategies. We believe personal attention is the future of consulting. We want you to build that future with us. $550,000. More than triple my current salary. Working for people who valued exactly what Victoria considered worthless inefficiency. But the most beautiful part of their offer wasn't the money. We know you can't bring proprietary information from Apex, they continued. But we also know that client relationships are built on trust and personal connection, not database files. If you choose to join us and if clients choose to work with someone they trust rather than staying with someone who treats them like transaction numbers, that's simply the natural consequence of different business philosophies. I understood immediately what they were suggesting. They weren't asking me to steal clients or violate agreements. They were simply pointing out that if I left Apex and clients decided they preferred working with someone who remembered their dog's health and their kids' college plans, that was their choice to make. Asterisk asterisk. The reveal asterisk asterisk. When I walked back into the conference room, Victoria was still lecturing about efficiency standards. My former coworkers stared at their hands or notebooks, clearly uncomfortable with what they'd witnessed. She noticed my return, paused her presentation. Do you have questions about our new protocols? I looked around the room at people I'd worked alongside for 16 months. Then, at the blank screen where my audit had been displayed before being destroyed. Then, back at Victoria's expectant face. Actually, I have an announcement. What happened next became the most satisfying moment of my professional life. I'm resigning from Apex Consulting effective immediately. I'll be joining Summit Partners as their Director of Client Success. The conference room went completely silent. You could hear the air conditioning. Someone's pen clicking nervously. Victoria's expression shifted from smug satisfaction to confusion. You can't just quit in the middle of a meeting, she stammered, clearly thrown off. There are protocols, notice requirements, transition procedures. Actually, I replied, pulling out my phone to show the contract offer. My employment agreement allows immediate resignation in cases of hostile work environment or professional misconduct. Having my work deleted in front of colleagues while being publicly humiliated qualifies on both counts. Nathan Price, who'd been quietly observing from the back, stepped forward. Perhaps we should discuss this privately before making hasty decisions, but I was done with private discussions and diplomatic solutions. Victoria had chosen to humiliate me publicly. She'd experienced the consequences just as publicly. There's nothing to discuss, I said, gathering my personal items. My decision is final. I'll submit formal paperwork within the hour. As I walked toward the exit, I could feel 24 pairs of eyes following. Some coworkers looked shocked, others impressed. A few looked like they were reconsidering their own career choices. Victoria called after me, voice higher than usual. You're making a huge mistake. Summit Partners is a startup with no track record. You're throwing away job security for some fantasy about relationships being more important than professional standards. I paused at the doorway, turned back. We'll see which approach proves more valuable. Asterisk asterisk. The fallout? Asterisk asterisk. Within 24 hours, I'd cleaned out my desk, completed exit interviews, and started my new position at Summit Partners. Their office was smaller than Apex's, but filled with energy and excitement about building something innovative in the consulting space. More importantly, I was finally working with people who understood that business relationships were built on genuine human connection, not efficiency metrics and standardized protocols. But the real validation came in the weeks that followed. I watched the natural consequences of Victoria's actions unfold with devastating precision. I hadn't reached out to any Apex clients, hadn't made sales calls or sent recruitment messages. I simply updated my professional profiles to reflect my new position, continued being the same person who'd spent a year building authentic relationships with people who needed consulting services. The first call came Thursday morning, 3 days after I started at Summit. Marcus Reed, the tech company owner whose rescue dog I'd asked about during check-ins, called my new office number directly. "Sophia," he said, "I heard through the network you've moved to a new firm. Wanted to congratulate you and ask about your company's capabilities." We talked for an hour about his business needs, his expansion plans, and yes, his dog's improved mobility after specialist treatment. By the end, he'd scheduled a meeting to discuss transitioning his account to Summit Partners. The second call came that same afternoon. Diana Cole, whose design firm anniversary I'd celebrated. "I've worked with consulting firms for 10 years, she told me. "You're the first person who ever made me feel like my company mattered beyond the invoice. If you're offering the same personal attention at your new firm, I'm interested in making a change." By the end of my first week at Summit, I'd received calls from 7 former Apex clients. Not because I solicited them, because they preferred working with someone who treated them as individuals rather than account numbers. Meanwhile, back at Apex Consulting, Victoria was starting to realize what she'd actually deleted when she destroyed my relationship-building documentation. I heard about her growing panic through mutual connections in the professional community. Apparently, she'd tried reaching out to major clients for routine check-ins, only to discover many were no longer interested in continuing their contracts. When she called Marcus Reed to schedule his quarterly review, he politely informed her he was exploring other options, would not be renewing his annual agreement. When she contacted Diana Cole about upcoming projects, Diana explained she'd found a partner who better understood her business values. One by one, the clients I'd spent a year building relationships with were making the choice to work with someone who remembered their personal details, their business challenges, their individual communication preferences. Victoria had believed client loyalty was tied to Apex's brand reputation and service quality. She was discovering that client loyalty was actually tied to the personal connections that made people feel valued and understood. Asterisk asterisk. The climax asterisk asterisk. Third week after my departure, I got a call that made everything clear about how devastating Victoria's decision had become. Carson Mills, the gym owner who'd started calling me directly instead of going through Apex's main number, wanted to share information he thought I should know. "Victoria called me yesterday," he said. "Asked if there were service issues that might explain why I was considering other options. When I told her I was following you to Summit because I valued our personal connection, she actually argued with me about it." He laughed, but not in an amused way. "She told me professional relationships should be based on service quality, not personal chit-chat about marathons and family. Said I was making an emotional decision instead of a business decision. Can you believe that?" She was lecturing me about how I should choose my own consulting partners. That call revealed everything about why Victoria's approach was failing so spectacularly. Even faced with evidence that personal relationships were driving client decisions, she couldn't adjust her philosophy. She was still trying to convince people that efficiency metrics mattered more than feeling valued and understood. By the end of my first month at Summit Partners, 16 former Apex clients had either switched to our firm or started conversations about potential transitions. These weren't small accounts. They represented over 65% of Apex's annual revenue. I wasn't actively recruiting them. I was simply being available when they called, remembering details about their lives and businesses, providing the same personal attention that had built our relationships in the first place. Summit was thriving beyond their most optimistic projections. Apex Consulting was experiencing the worst client retention crisis in company history. The most satisfying part wasn't the money or professional success, though both were incredible. The most satisfying part was knowing Victoria had created this entire situation herself. Through her stubborn refusal to value what clients actually wanted, she could have supported my relationship-building approach. Could have learned from improved retention rates and satisfaction scores. Could have recognized that personal attention was generating measurable business results. Instead, she'd chosen to publicly humiliate me and delete work representing hundreds of thousands in client loyalty, apparently believing her efficiency-focused philosophy was more important than actual evidence of what worked. Asterisk asterisk. The resolution. 2 months after my departure, I heard through networks that Nathan Price had called an emergency board meeting to address the retention crisis. Apex Consulting was facing layoffs, reduced operations, and potentially selling to a larger firm to survive the revenue loss. Victoria, who'd been so confident about her professional standards and efficiency metrics, was now scrambling to explain how the company had lost most major accounts within 8 weeks. According to sources still working there, she'd initially tried blaming my departure for the defections. Argued I'd somehow poisoned relationships or violated ethics to steal accounts, but the timeline didn't support her accusations. Clients weren't leaving immediately after I resigned. They were leaving after attempting to maintain relationships with Victoria's new efficiency-focused approach, and discovering they preferred working with people who treated them as individuals. The board investigation revealed exactly what I could have told them months earlier. Clients choose consulting partners based on trust, communication quality, and feeling valued, not on how quickly their calls get processed or how efficiently their concerns get categorized. Victoria had spent a year dismissing relationship building as inefficient social conversation. Now she faced consequences of that philosophy in the form of defections threatening the entire company's survival. 3 months after my departure, I received the call that made this revenge story complete. Nathan Price contacted me personally to discuss what he called a potential partnership opportunity. He wanted to know if Summit Partners would be interested in acquiring Apex's remaining client accounts, possibly hiring some staff during what he described as a strategic restructuring process. The company that had considered my relationship-building approach inefficient garbage was now hoping to sell their remaining assets to the firm built on exactly the principles Victoria had rejected. During our conversation, Nathan mentioned they were re-evaluating leadership approaches in their client relations department. Reading between the lines, Victoria's position was no longer secure. "I have to ask," he said near the end of our call. "What would it take to bring you back to Apex as Director of Client Relations? We're prepared to offer significant compensation increases and complete autonomy over relationship management strategies." The irony was incredible. 3 months after watching my work get deleted in front of colleagues, I was being recruited back to implement exactly the same approach, at much higher salary, with complete authority over the department that had rejected my methods. But I had no interest in returning to work for people who'd only learned to value my approach after losing millions in revenue. "I appreciate the offer," I told him, "but I'm very happy with my current position." Summit Partners understood the value of personal client relationships from day one, rather than having to learn it through crisis. Asterisk asterisk. Epilogue. Asterisk asterisk. 6 months after leaving Apex Consulting, I was promoted to senior partner at Summit. With equity, participation, and responsibility for expanding our client relationship philosophy across multiple service lines, The clients who'd followed me from Apex became the foundation for our most successful year in company history. Meanwhile, Apex underwent the strategic restructuring Nathan had euphemistically described. They laid off 35% of staff, sold their largest office space, ultimately merged with a competitor who valued efficiency metrics over personal relationships. Victoria was not retained during the merger. I learned about her departure through LinkedIn updates and professional network conversations. According to former colleagues, she'd spent her final months at Apex trying to rebuild client relationships, using the same impersonal approach that caused the crisis in the first place. She apparently never understood that the problem wasn't her communication skills or technical knowledge. The problem was her fundamental belief that business relationships should be purely transactional. The last update I heard came from a mutual contact who mentioned she was having difficulty finding comparable positions. Her most recent role had ended during a major retention crisis. Potential employers were understandably concerned about hiring someone whose management approach had contributed to such significant revenue loss, especially in client-facing roles where relationship building was considered essential. I felt no pleasure hearing about her career difficulties. My satisfaction came from knowing that the principles she'd mocked and rejected were now recognized throughout our industry as essential for sustainable success. Every consulting firm was investing in personal client relationship strategies. Every professional development program emphasized treating clients as individuals rather than transaction sources. Every successful practice prioritized exactly the approach Victoria had considered inefficient garbage. She'd been wrong about what clients valued, wrong about what drove business success, wrong about the importance of personal connections in professional relationships, and her wrongness had been revealed not through elaborate schemes or calculated attacks but simply through allowing natural consequences to unfold after she chose to publicly destroy work that represented the foundation of customer loyalty. The most elegant revenge is always the kind where your enemy defeats themselves through their own actions. You just have to step aside and let their poor decisions create the destruction they deserve. Today, 2 years after watching my audit files get deleted in front of 24 colleagues, I'm running the client relations division for one of the fastest-growing consulting firms in our region. Our success is built entirely on the principle Victoria rejected: that business relationships thrive when people feel valued, understood, and personally connected to their service providers. Every day I work with clients who appreciate having their birthdays remembered, their family updates acknowledged, their business challenges addressed with genuine personal investment in their success. And every day I'm reminded that the best revenge against people who undervalue your contributions is simply proving them wrong through your continued success elsewhere. Victoria thought she was deleting inefficient documentation when she destroyed my relationship-building work. What she actually deleted was the only thing preventing her professional world from collapsing around her. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is just letting people experience the natural consequences of their own terrible decisions, while you build something better somewhere else. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever had someone undervalue work you knew was important, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Sometimes the best therapy for professional betrayal is sharing stories with people who understand what it feels like to have your contributions dismissed by people who should know better. And if you enjoyed hearing how deleting my files became the beginning of Victoria's professional downfall, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about workplace revenge that writes itself when you simply let incompetent managers face the consequences of their own poor judgment.